Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israeli forces killed at least 29 people in Gaza on Thursday in two separate attacks as they waited for humanitarian aid. The latest massacre struck Palestinians in northern Gaza City and at the Al-Nusrat camp in central Gaza.
Today, with no warning, they attacked this warehouse. Though this center is empty of militants or security guards or police even that may threaten Israel's security, we got the aid and we distribute to people. The people need to come and get their Ramadan meals. Today, they hit the warehouse and burnt all the aid, including the dates. Also, the blood of the people who work here fill the place.
Even before yesterday's massacre, Gazan officials reported Israeli forces have killed more than 400 Palestinians as they wait for aid deliveries. Hamas has reportedly proposed a ceasefire deal, which includes the release of hostages in exchange for 700 to 1,000 Palestinian prisoners, delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza, and the return of forcibly displaced Palestinians to their homes. Elsewhere, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas appointed longtime economic advisor Mohammed Mustafa as the Palestinian Authority's new prime minister Thursday. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer offered his most scathing condemnation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his far-right government, calling for new elections in Israel. He spoke from the Senate floor.
If Prime Minister Netanyahu's current coalition remains in power after the war begins to wind down and continues to pursue dangerous and inflammatory policies that test existing U.S. standards for assistance, then the United States will have no choice but to play a more active role in shaping Israeli policy by using our leverage to change the present course.
Senator Schumer is a staunch defender of Israel and the highest-ranking elected Jewish American lawmaker. Meanwhile, the Biden administration imposed sanctions on 2 Israeli settler outposts and 3 individual settlers in the occupied West Bank who have harassed and attacked Palestinians. In South Africa, Naledi Pandor, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, warned South African citizens they will face prosecution if they serve in the Israeli military as it commits war crimes in Gaza. Pandor said, "When you come home, we're going to arrest you." Here in New York, over 100 activists were arrested Thursday after occupying the lobby of the New York Times in the latest protest against the paper's coverage of Israel's war on Gaza. One man was filmed harassing a group of protesters and ripping away a banner that read "Lies." This came just hours after a separate early morning protest, which blocked trucks from accessing and picking up newspapers at the Times printing facility in Queens. Some of the demonstrators laid out a pile of rubble on the road and placed a sign that read, "Consent for genocide is manufactured here," unquote. In Canada, a growing list of over 1,000 alumni, faculty, staff, and others from Montreal's McGill University signed an open letter in solidarity with students on hunger strike to demand McGill divest from companies arming Israel and impose an academic boycott on Israel over its genocide in Gaza and occupation of Palestinian land. This is hunger striker Shadi explaining why they joined the peaceful action despite facing personal health challenges.
I see and hear about all the people in Gaza who are disabled and chronically ill, and they don't get to opt out of the starvation, of the bombs, and of the genocide. I think of Yazan al-Kafarna, who was starved by the IOF, right? And I think of Gaza's Deaf Children's Center that got destroyed a few days ago. And I don't think I can sit this one out.
In more protest news, prominent writers, including Naomi Klein, Michelle Alexander, Hisham Matar, Isabella Hamad, and Zaina Arafat, announced they will not participate in this year's PEN World Voices Festival for failing to appropriately respond, they said, to Israel's, quote, cultural genocide in Gaza. The authors write, quote, Israel's killed nearly 100 academics and writers. If organizations like PEN America cling to the illusion of political neutrality in the face of a clear effort to destroy Palestinian lives and culture, one can only wonder whether there will be any writers left in Gaza to tell the story of their apocalypse or to trust words and speech when the killing finally ends, or any record left of the history they've lived, they wrote. At least 60 people, including children, are feared dead in the Mediterranean Sea after departing Libya on a migrant vessel that went adrift en route to Europe. The engine reportedly broke down, leaving the group lost at sea for days without food and water. Several others were rescued, many of them from Senegal, Mali, and Gambia. The humanitarian aid group SOS Méditerranée said it had rescued another 200 migrants headed to Europe on a wooden boat in an overcrowded rubber dinghy. According to the International Organization for Migration, 2,500 migrants died or went missing in the Mediterranean last year as they attempted to reach Europe. 200 deaths have been recorded since the start of this year. In Washington state, the immigrant rights group La Resistencia is reporting over 300 people have joined a hunger strike following the recent death of Charles Leo Daniel, a 61-year-old man from Trinidad and Tobago, and reports of several suicide attempts at the troubled Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma. Activists have set up an encampment outside the jail as they and detained immigrants participate in the peaceful action, demanding Northwest be shut down. They're also calling for an independent investigation into Daniel's death, who was found unresponsive while being held in solitary confinement earlier this month. Northwest is run by the private company Geo Group. To see our recent interview with La Resistencia's Marumoro Villalpando, who's herself on hunger strike, go to democracynow.org. Vice President Kamala Harris visited a Planned Parenthood clinic in St. Paul, Minnesota Thursday, in the first such official visit by a president or vice president. The visit was part of Harris's Fight for Reproductive Freedoms tour as the Biden campaign seeks to capitalize on voter anger over the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade. This is Vice President Harris.
The stories abound. I have heard stories of and have met with women who had miscarriages in toilets. Women who were being denied emergency care because the healthcare providers there at an emergency room were afraid that because of the laws in their state that they could be criminalized, sent to prison for providing health care.
We'll have more on Vice President Harris's visit after headlines. In Michigan, a jury found James Crumbley guilty of involuntary manslaughter for failing to prevent his teenage son from going on a shooting spree which killed 4 students at Oxford High in 2021. James Crumbley's wife, Jennifer, was convicted on the same charges last month after prosecutors successfully argued the couple ignored obvious warning signs and bought the gun for their son. It's the first time parents have been directly charged for deaths caused by their child in a mass shooting. They'll both be sentenced next month. In California, authorities have released body cam footage showing the moments before deputies shot and killed 15-year-old Ryan Gaynor, a black child with autism, holding a gardening tool at the time. Video of the second deputy to arrive shows just 8.5 seconds passed from when he exited his vehicle to when he shot the teen. Distraught family members can be heard asking, "Why did you shoot my baby? And where is your taser?" The family's lawyer said at least 2 of the officers on the scene were familiar with Ryan Gaynor and would have known he did not pose a threat. And Senator Bernie Sanders has introduced legislation calling for a 32-hour work week. Sanders said the proposal is not a radical idea and has countries and companies around the world increasingly adopt shorter work weeks and record the same, or in many cases, higher rates of productivity. Sanders said technological advances have benefited corporations and CEOs while leaving out workers, and that AI threatens to further deepen this inequality. On Thursday, a Senate panel held a hearing on the issue. This is UAW President Sean Fain, who pushed for a 32-hour work week in his union's initial contract demands to the big 3 automakers last fall.
But time, just like every precious resource in our society, is not freely given to the working class. Since the Industrial Revolution, we've seen productivity in our society skyrocket. With the advance of technology, 1 worker is now doing what 12 workers used to do. More profit is being squeezed out of every hour, every minute, and every second. Who's going to act to fix this epidemic of lives dominated by work? Are the employers going to act? Will Congress act? How can working class peoples take back their lives and take back their time?
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.